Professor Void. Professor Void.
Oh my goodness. Oh. All right, yeah. Real life lore. Teach us what happened to the flight of Malaysia.
This video is made possible by Skillshare. Learn anything you want to learn with Skillshare for free for 2 months at skl.sh/reallifelore19.
Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was a scheduled flight on March 8, 2014 that was scheduled to leave from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia at 12:35 a.m. and arrive in Beijing, China at 6:30 a.m.
I thought it was like an international, well, I mean, I guess it is an international flight technically, but I thought it was like a long flight.
But Flight 370 never arrived in Beijing, and now over 4 years later since the plane mysteriously vanished, we still don't have an answer for what happened to it, or where exactly it currently is. The disappearance of the plane mid-flight and the lack of any conclusive answers has guaranteed that Flight 370 remains the greatest mystery in aviation history. This video is my attempt to give you as much information as possible, and to help explain how exactly a plane can go missing in the 21st century.
I wonder if maybe it was shot down in China or something. And just that, and their surveillance just kind of kept it under wraps. Maybe, I don't want to say shot down, but I mean, it's not like fucking whatever happened to Russia where they're just shooting planes down like it's nothing. I don't know. Jeez. I don't know, maybe.
First, the basics. Flight 370 was one of 2 daily flights operated by Malaysia Airlines that made flights between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing. Flight 370 was scheduled to leave Kuala Lumpur on the 8th of March at 12:35 a.m. and arrive in Beijing at 6:30 a.m. for a total flight time of 5 hours and 34 minutes. The aircraft that was being flown was a Boeing 777 passenger jet that was carrying enough fuel to remain in the air for 7 hours and 31 minutes, more than enough time to make a diversion in the event of an emergency. The plane itself was 11 years old and had no previous incidents of mechanical issues reported. The flight was operated by a crew of 12 people, all of whom were Malaysian citizens, and 2 pilots. The pilot in command was 53-year-old Zahir Ahmad Shah, a longtime employee who had joined Malaysia Airlines back in 1981 and had over 18,000 hours of flight time experience.
Look at my guy. He's a vet. Look at that. This guy could have flown into the Hudson twice and took off from it. 18,000 hours, 1981. He's a Gen Xer, I think. Look at that. Solid bald head. Look at that smirk. This guy has personality. No. That's how good of a pilot he was. He just disappeared the bitch right out.
His co-pilot was 27-year-old Farik Abdul Hamid.
Damn, they don't even have a picture of my boy. Hold on. Oh, that sucks.
Who had been with the company for 7 years and had over 2,700 hours of flight experience as well. In addition to these 2 pilots and 10 other crew members, there was a total of 227 passengers that were on board. 153 Chinese citizens, 50 Malaysians, 7 Indonesians, 6 Australians, 5 Indians, 4 French, 3 Americans, 2 Canadians, 2 Iranians, 2 New Zealanders, 2 Ukrainians, 1 Dutch, 1 Russian, and 1 Taiwanese. Departing slightly later than scheduled, Flight 370 took off from the runway at Kuala Lumpur at 12:42 a.m. and was soon cleared by air traffic control to climb to 18,000 feet in altitude. Subsequent voice analysis has confirmed that the first officer aboard the flight verbally communicated with air traffic control before the flight took off, and that the captain was in communication with them just after taking off. The flight at first continued normally, but at 1:06 a.m. the plane sent its last automated position report and final transmission. The last verbal contact that anybody had with somebody on the flight occurred just moments later at 1:19 a.m., just 37 minutes after the plane had taken off. At that time, Kuala Lumpur radar made a call to the cockpit of the flight telling them to switch over to Vietnam's airspace, saying, Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. This was answered by the head pilot, Captain Shah, when he simply said, Good night, Malaysian 370. The plane was now flying over the Gulf of Thailand on its scheduled path, but this is when things start to get weird. Just 3 minutes after making their final verbal contact with the outside world, at 1:21 a.m., Flight 370 suddenly suddenly vanished from the radar screens at both Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh City. This means that the transponder on board the flight was no longer working at this time. There were very few clouds in the area with no storms, which means it's extremely likely that the transponder was manually turned off by somebody instead. Military radar was still capable of tracking the flight after this point though, and here is what happened next. For whatever reason, the plane began to make a turn right, but then took a sudden left turn to a southwesterly direction. Flight 370 then flew in this direction directly back over the Malay Peninsula, fluctuating a few thousand feet in altitude. At 1:52 a.m., Flight 370 was detected to cross just south of Penang Island and then took another turn to fly across the Strait of Malacca. The last location of MH370 known with certainty was about here over the Indian Ocean at 2:22 a.m., which was near the limits of the Malaysian military radar. Despite being lost to radar, the flight was still making satellite communications. Based on an analysis of this satellite data, it has been concluded that MH370 then took another bizarre turn in this general direction and area and continued to fly this way for over 5 hours. The whole time this part of the trip was happening, the aircraft's satellite communication system was responding to hourly status requests from the satellite company Inmarsat. A phone call was made to the cockpit again at 2:39 a.m., which rang but went unanswered by anybody inside. Over 4 hours later at 7:13 a.m., another phone call was made to the cockpit, but this time too, it just rang and went unanswered.
That motherfucker was hijacked. That motherfucker was hijacked by some, I don't know. It was hijacked by one person and fucking aliens. It was hijacked by aliens and they sent it to space. That's what happened. Fucking, that's what's up. And they still don't know how, like, no, the thing got turned off. The thing got turned off and then fucking someone drove it into the ocean. Like, that has to be it. That has to be it.
7:24 a.m., while still airborne somewhere over the Indian Ocean, the flight was 1 hour late past its scheduled arrival in Beijing. The Malaysian government announced that they had lost contact with the plane and that search and rescue operations had been mobilized. But unknown to them at the time, MH370 was still flying. The last piece of data received from the plane happened at 8:19 a.m. It was a logon request sent by the flight to the company Inmarsat, which would have only happened for a few reasons, namely either a power or a software failure. The plane at this point had been flying for 7 hours and 38 minutes, and since it was only scheduled to fly for 5.5 hours, it's most likely that the plane had run out of fuel by this point. Inmarsat sent another status request to the plane at 9:15 a.m., but this time it finally went unanswered. Based on that fact, it's most likely that the plane crashed in the Indian Ocean sometime between 8:19 and 9:15, but it's still not known exactly where this happened. When the final communication was made with the flight at 8:19 a.m., it's been calculated that the flight was somewhere along this black curve. Taking that into consideration and the general flight path the plane was taking analyzed from the satellite data, and it's most likely that the plane went down somewhere around here several thousand kilometers west of Australia. So to recap, the plane departed from Kuala Lumpur on the way to Beijing and started flying on the normal flight path, but...
What's your theory, Tyler? What you got? What you got? I think it was hijacked. I think it was definitely hijacked. And someone just dropped the ball on executing their plan or whatever. Maybe it was like it was hijacked for a second and then they gained control, but no one had any idea how to operate it. Someone must have sabotaged the thing and it just held straight and oh fuck, man, that has to suck. Oh my gosh. But like again, like there would have been like it landed on an island from oh shit. Yeah, it was probably the precursor to Lost. Maybe, geez, I don't know. It was just because, like, there's just so much. Like, because, like, okay, if it landed in the water, odds are, I would say at least one person survived. If one person survived, there would have been, like, pieces of the plane floating, right? Well, hold up. Let's, yeah.